University in 1996 with a bachelor's degree in civil engineering. He earned his commission through the Navy's Officer Candidate School in Pensacola, Florida in October 1998. He later attended the University of Florida, graduating in 2004 with a master's degree in ocean engineering, and subsequently the U.S. Naval War College, graduating in 2014 with a master's degree in strategic studies. Captain Butler's first assignment was to the Public Works Center in Pensacola, Florida, where he served as the first lieutenant division officer. He then served in Naval Mobile Construction Battalion 4 as the material liaison officer and Alpha Company commander, completing deployments to Okinawa, Japan, and Iraq. Following his NMCB tour, he was selected for the Civil Engineers Corps' Ocean Facilities Program and attended the University of Florida and the Naval Diving and Salvage Training Center in Panama City, Florida. Upon completion of his training, he was assigned to the Naval Facilities Engineering Service Center, serving as the Diving Operations Branch Head and Commanding Diving Officer. His next assignment was as the Public Works Officer for the Marine Corps Air Station, Beaufort, South Carolina. During this time, he served as an individual augment to MARSA and completed a deployment to Afghanistan. Upon return from his IA assignment, he assumed command of Underwater Construction Team 1 in Little Creek, Virginia. After completing his command tour, he served as the Future Operations Officer for 1st Naval Construction Division. His next assignment was as a student at the Naval War College in Newport, Rhode Island, then transitioning to serve as the Public Works Officer for Naval Station Newport. Captain Butler next assumed the responsibilities as the Assistant Program Manager for PEO SUB PMS 485, Maritime Surveillance Systems, leading all ocean operations in support of fixed surveillance systems and undersea networks. In July of 2019, he was detailed to his current assignment as the Public Works Officer for Public Works Department Portsmouth at the Norfolk Naval Shipyard in Portsmouth, Virginia. Captain Butler is a qualified CB combat warfare officer and basic diving officer. He's a registered professional engineer in the Commonwealth of Virginia and is a member of the Defense Acquisition Corps. Personal decorations include the Navy Achievement Medal, Navy Commendation Medal, and Meritorious Service Medal. Thank you for participating with us today, Captain Butler. And I'm going to turn it over to you, and I will start your slides in just a second.
Okay, great, Leanne, thanks. I'll do a quick mic check before I start.
Yes, you are good to go. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you again. So as Leanne mentioned, my name is Captain Bill Butler. I am the Public Works Officer here at Norfolk Naval Shipyard. And first off, I want to thank the local SAME post for giving us the opportunity to talk about the Navy's Shipyard Infrastructure Optimization Program. I really appreciate some of the opening comments from Admiral Hanley, especially as he highlighted there are a few places that the connection between infrastructure and fleet readiness is more prevalent. And so than being at a shipyard, a Navy shipyard. And so I know I'm not alone for being grateful for that opportunity to serve at this right place at the right time. Second up, it would be naive of me to not acknowledge that there are some folks out there in the virtual audience that may have knowledge, even direct involvement with SIOP as it's developed over the years. And so from those folks out in the audience, I welcome your comments and questions throughout the presentation here, and really hope that this is a collaborative discussion more so than simply just a SIOP brief. Along those lines, I've got a couple of friends here on the panel with me that I'd like to give an opportunity to introduce themselves. So first, Mr. Keith Sellers, if you could introduce yourself, please.
Thanks, Captain. Hey, I'm Keith Sellers. I'm the Deputy Public Works Officer here at Norfolk Naval Shipyard. I am a retired Civil Engineer Corps officer, and after retiring, I went to work for Civil Service, and I've been here at the shipyard for about 13 years now. So I've been involved with from the very beginning with the SIOP idea and moving forward with where it is now. Thank you.
Thanks, Keith. And next, if I could, I'd like to ask Mr. Tony Ammons to introduce himself as well.
Yes, thank you, Captain. It's Tony Ammons, and the direct opposite of Keith, who's been on board for 13 years. I've been on about 3 weeks. I am the Deputy Program Management Officer, recently hired in for the SIOP program here at Norfolk Naval Shipyard. I'm also a retired Civil Engineer Corps officer, so I bounced around a bit in that. Since retiring, I've been with the Marine Corps and with Midland, and so familiar with the area and a different customer, but similarly challenging. Looking forward to the SIOP program and presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Tony. So my intention here today is to talk about the SIOP program from the big picture level with a bit of discussion about why and how the program was created, and then dial in the focus to talk about SIOP activity that's happening at the Norfolk Naval Shipyard today and then into the future. And the intent was this to be more than just a traditional NAVFAC PWD brief. Didn't want to simply talk about the ongoing programmed and planned construction projects, and that was intentional because SIOP is intentionally different. Wanted to get some time spent getting into some of the details of what makes SIOP unique to other Navy facilities, installations, planning processes. So first off, a quick history lesson. Norfolk Naval Shipyard got its start as the Gosport Shipyard back in 1767, and it's been in service to the Navy ever since. Some of you may know, but at its height, after World War II, the Navy operated 11 shipyards across the country. Following the war, shipyards largely moved away from new construction and focused their efforts on maintaining ships of the fleet. So that's just a bit to talk about the transition that's happened in the mission of shipyards for the Navy over the years. And then shipyard closures occurred frequently under the base realignment and closure process during the 1990s, shrinking the number of government-owned shipyards down to the 4 we have today. So if we fast forward to 2017, in a Government Accountability Office report titled Naval Shipyards, Actions Needed to Improve Poor Conditions That Affect Operations, it was highlighted that the Navy had committed to increased investment in shipyard facilities, but as of 2013, facilities still remained in a poor condition. They really emphasized the selective choosing of the words poor, really poor condition, and highlighted some very quick, hard-hitting conclusions. The cost of backlogging facility projects resulted in increased cost for those projects up to 40% over 5 years, and identified that it would take up to 19 years to clear the backlog of facility projects that had accumulated. And similar issues were mounting and accumulating in the capital equipment investment area. Inadequate facilities and equipment had resulted in 1,300 lost operational days for carriers and over 12,000 lost operational days for submarines, and concluded that the shipyards have been unable to conduct approximately 70 of over 200 maintenance periods looking forward into the next 23 fiscal years. Some specifics for the Norfolk Naval Shipyard: facilities had an average age of 76 years old, a condition of failing, and had equipment that aged the average age of 29 years old. So some very aged and antiquated equipment and facilities, resulting in failing conditions that were ultimately affecting fleet readiness. So lots of reports and lots of compelling statistics, but the takeaway: the condition that the Navy had allowed its shipyard facilities and infrastructure to degrade to was having a significant negative impact on ship maintenance, fleet readiness, and operational capability. And so how did we get there? I often put myself in the shoes of the PWOs over the time that these realizations were coming to light, trying to remind everybody that these conditions didn't just develop overnight, didn't just develop over a year, not even just a decade. It was a pattern of infrastructure neglect, and really more accurately, the failure to appropriately prioritize infrastructure and sustainment and maintenance. And there's a few reasons for that. Dry docks, the critical asset that they are, it's very difficult to schedule maintenance and renovation projects, and there's no swing space for a dry dock. It's likely that renovation and repair projects were deferred to support operational schedule over the years. In addition, production and industrial facilities not attractive when compared to some of the facility projects and the operational impacts that Admiral Hanley was alluding to earlier. Runways, piers, operational facilities, much more dramatic in translating the operational impact, and therefore much more attractive to be spending investment dollars on. Continuing to connect to some of the points made by Admiral Hanley earlier, the criticality of the tie of operational impact and readiness. So anybody that's been involved previously in trying to successfully propose and program MILCON and special projects, you don't get very far with sob stories and photos that depict aging facilities that are falling apart. You're not getting very far unless you can translate those issues into an operational impact. So that's also what was embedded in the GAO report. traditional planning processes were missing some key elements: analytically based goals and metrics, full identification of funding resources required, comprehensive results-oriented approach. And so the ultimate answer they came up with is the shipyard infrastructure optimization. Initially, it was the plan. Now it's migrated into the program. So that is SIOP, the Shipyard Infrastructure Optimization Program. So SIOP, it matured into a partnership between NAVC, NAVFAC, and CNIC, and really is somewhat more aligned with traditional DoD acquisition and larger NAVC programs, and not quite so much aligned with traditional construction programs that we've had in the past. It's a holistic program that aims to treat each of the 4 naval shipyards as part of the same program, recognizing their holistic and interdependent support to the Navy. So the innovative program must address not just the operations of the facilities and dry docks, not just the engineering and design of the facilities. It needs to be even more holistic and start with the planning processes, incorporating all aspects that will be impactful, environmental and cultural resources, and assessing the impacts and needs of a vast and diverse group of stakeholders. Incorporating the planning and programming of resources, supporting MILCONs, special projects, and capital equipment, and doing that based on a more in-depth analysis resulting in true optimization. And I want to call attention to one of the items there on the first slide. True that the sustainment of existing infrastructure does not fall under the scope of SIOP, but as we've come to learn here at the shipyard, and it's become a pretty commonplace expression, that it's all SIOP, meaning everything's basically 1 degree away from SIOP. All things really need to be geared at supporting this effort to really truly optimize and move forward into the future. If we could move to slide 2. So shown on slide 2, here are some of the initial very high-level investment estimates that capture what's needed to correct the course. First bullet there is where the real operational and readiness impact can be translated, making sure that the dry docks are available to support availabilities as planned. As such, that's where the investment started. As Admiral Hanley alluded to earlier, the $4 to $5 billion in the early years of the program are focused on dry docks to directly support the mission needs of the Navy, and really, in my opinion, is a sign of success for the early stages. Similar for some portion of the capital equipment investment, need that new capital equipment investment in order to keep up with advancing technology, the platforms, and the mechanics that are operating the equipment that supports them. To me, the facility and equipment bullets are the investment areas where the optimization magic really starts to happen. These are the investment areas where SIOP will start to pay for itself. Synchronization of capital equipment and facilities is the key to achieving true optimization. It's not just the right equipment, not just an appropriately placed facility. It's the right equipment, the right process, and the right facility that will truly maximize optimization and maximize the return on investment. And the sub-bullet there under facilities, anywhere you see recovery, savings of man days, we all know that time means money, and for the Navy, that also translates into readiness, getting platforms back on mission. So that's the criticality and the benefit of truly optimizing. If we could move to the next slide, slide 3. So as that's pulling up, what you'll see when the slide pulls up, it shows the locations that are affected and fall into the SIOP program. So the headquarters located at the Washington Navy Yard with Mr. Steve Lagana leading the program, and the program management offices have stood up at each of the Navy shipyards. You heard Mr. Ammons, Tony Ammons, who's the recently come on board program management office for here at Norfolk Naval Shipyard, but each of the shipyards identified there on the graphic have their own PMO office, and there's obviously some similarities between each of the Navy shipyards, but none are exactly the same. So geographic diversity, different NAVFAC and CNIC headquarters offices supporting each location, different environmental and cultural resource issues to consider, and different mission support specifics in each location. And the challenge becomes managing those differences holistically to support the overall program. But I believe this is some of the reason the program has received such support early on. It's appropriately acknowledged that it's not just about one shipyard and what that one shipyard needs. It's about synchronizing all of the Navy shipyards and addressing their needs programmatically. So that's a lot of words, but if we switch to slide 4. So So this next slide will give a graphic representation that really does a better job of depicting what it is we're talking about here. So in the top left, the modeling of the activity is shown there is what was required to support a valve repair in the current configuration and laydown at Pearl Harbor Naval Shipyard. So basically a heat map of all the traffic and movement and activity required to support that operation based off of the currently existing constrained laydown there at Pearl Harbor Naval Shipyard. But if you look to the top right, the same repair scenario executed with an optimized Pearl Harbor. And this does assume an unconstrained ability to reconfigure Pearl Harbor Naval Shipyard, and that certainly will meet some challenges, but what's highlighted at the bottom are the opportunities that are available when you put in the time and the money to invest towards that effort. So delay time is reduced, process time reduced, and most importantly, reduction in availability duration, reduction in total work days, and getting ships and submarines back out on mission. If we could go to the next slide, please. So here on slide 5, we've got some of the high-level goals and visions of the program. It's many things. It's a standardized industrial plant. So we talked about some of the differences between the shipyards. While much of that won't change, each location can't be so unique that you lose the benefits of standardization. There should be some ability to recognize and replicate processes from one shipyard to the next. Shipyards need to be flexible. They need to have facilities, infrastructure, and equipment that is able to accommodate changes on the large and small scale. They need to be smart. As Admiral Hanley alluded to, the network of all things, the ability to have equipment that is networked so you can track operations and productivity, as well as monitor for potential maintenance requirements. Sustainability. If the new infrastructure is difficult and costly to maintain and sustain, we'll be right back where we started, much sooner than any of us want. Adaptable to mission. The class of ships of yesterday and today are not the class of ships coming in the next decades. The equipment and technology being used today are not those that will be available and critical in the coming years. We're already working through how to incorporate things like fiber optic cable maintenance, additive manufacturing, 3D printing, all trying to work that into 100-year-old facilities. And so at the bottom there is possibly one of the biggest challenges for all of SIOP, and definitely the one that we feel most purely here in the Public Works Department, must execute during normal operations. So as I alluded to earlier, you can't afford for Norfolk Naval Shipyard or any of the shipyards to take a year or two off. There's no swing space for a dry dock. We need to work infrastructure upgrades in conjunction with maintaining the shipyard's critical maintenance schedules. If we can move to slide 6. So for the overall program, there's description of phases, parts of phases, often a little bit difficult to keep track and differentiate between each. But what we have here in slide 6 is the highest level breakdown. And the first portion there, phase 1, that's really what's gotten to us to where we are today with the program execution. It summarizes much of the congressional and big Navy level attempts to capture the problem and lay out the path and the framework for how the Navy will solve it going forward. What's shown there in phase 2 is really where we're at now. The first sub-bullet describes modeling and simulation. That's the primary effort happening at Norfolk Naval Shipyard now, and we'll get into some more details about that in a minute. Also alludes to the development of area development plans and existing condition studies that are critical to establishing that plan. These studies are critical because, as we all know, you need to know where you are today in order to appropriately develop the plan to get you to where you need to be. In the second sub-bullet under phase 2, it also emphasizes that projects needed to resolve operational impacts, address safety deficiencies, resolve environmental compliance issues, and maintain nuclear license. Those all need to continue and need to address existing issues as well as issues that will arise as we move forward and get ourselves to phase 3. And phase 3 is really about the execution. If executed as intended, there's also obviously going to be the need for a fairly significant demolition program to make the space you need to truly achieve optimization. We can move to slide 7. So this highlights really where Norfolk Naval Shipyard is now. The modeling and simulation that's referenced at the top, There's a series of site visits being executed to undertake the significant data collection effort to build what's called a digital twin. And this is the tool that can be used to determine the true optimized layout. The shipyard physical layout, this is the process of a gap analysis to assess information available to determine existing conditions across the full spectrum of infrastructure to determine what additional studies are required to get the complete picture necessary. Scopes have been developed, and right now we're just awaiting here locally at Norfolk Naval Shipyard for the funding to execute those studies and ultimately move forward to the area development plans. And the modeling and simulation results, the digital twin, and the area development plans work together to identify the true optimized solution that is unique to each shipyard. If we move to slide 8, please. So here's where we'll start to transition from talking about SIOP at the big picture level to more specifics of the primary effort underway at Norfolk Naval Shipyard. So in the audience, I've got Mr. Dave Hunt as a phone a friend, as a SIOP project manager for Norfolk Naval Shipyard. And so if the questions get too deep for my knowledge level, he's out there ready to help assist with any detailed questions about the modeling and simulation process. Getting from the phase 1 high-level estimates and theoretical optimization to the data-driven modeled and predicted optimization, that's really what we're working here currently at Norfolk Naval Shipyard. In the first phase of the modeling and simulation effort, we moved from production. It's really about trying to emphasize moving production functions closer to the waterfront. As we get into the follow-on phases, it's about material and personnel highways, mapping the patterns and paths that mechanics, engineers, and material and equipment need to travel to execute ship maintenance based on the infrastructure and equipment laydown. And then in phase 3, we eventually would like to get into even greater detail and fidelity to get to true full model that will support optimization. If we can move to the next slide, please. So this next slide attempts to represent all of the different data streams that are really required to fully support the model to make it the tool that it can be. I'm a facilities guy with a facility background, so my initial perception of this was really it's just about lay down of facilities, lay down of roads, and then optimizing those locations. But it's truly much more than just that. There is the need for that information. You see the CAD layouts, that's what NAVFAC was able to bring to the table in developing of the model. Use of traditional shipyard project management planning tools, some of the reporting elements that are shown there in the top right, those will capture and map out the resources that the shipyard traditionally applies to executing its availabilities. Subject matter interviews also are conducted to really squeeze out the extra details that the numbers may not just tell you. For example, trying to determine why work activity that would have been planned for 7 days actually took 10 days. Why was that? Getting into those details really helps identify and allows the model to capture and replicate some of those delays and why they happen. And the key point that's been emphasized and really understood from the start is that the model is only as good as the input. So each site visit, in-brief and out-briefs are conducted with the shipyard commander and key department heads. And to me, that really demonstrates that the fact that that level of leadership is willing to dedicate that amount of time really demonstrates the understanding of the importance of the effort and the fact that really it's all about the data that you input into the model will really drive the accuracy and applicability of the model on the back end. So we can move to slide 10. We'll start to get into some more additional description of the modeling scope, the goals and justification for investing the time to create the digital twin. That's what's some of the information that's being shown here on this slide. Generate a model based off existing conditions, prove the accuracy of that model, and then use that model to show an optimized shipyard. Next slide, please. So here in the next slide, as it comes up, this is really attempting to show the incremental approach to the collection of data. Increments 1 and 2, very manpower and time intensive. And what would really be ideal is to move forward to what's shown there on increment 3 implementing network and sensors that can capture real-time and incorporate real-time data, better, to give better fidelity and really truly maximize what you can do with the digital twin as it's being created. We can move to slide 12. The graphic that you'll see as this comes up shows what really is the desired outcome and what could be possible. It shows an optimized Norfolk Naval Shipyard layout. So if you have any familiarity with Norfolk Naval Shipyard and how it's laid out today, it's not as shown, but what's shown here is a version of what it could like if we truly lean into and capitalize on the technology available and move forward with optimization. So the digital twin, as the first bullet there summarizes the point, is to create, validate, and maintain models to optimize the physical layout to get ships back on station and out on mission faster. So I think I'm going to wrap it up there. I'm going to preclude the last slide. It really just emphasizes again more the process of the modeling, but I think I've elaborated on that a bit. And in conclusion, let's say that SIOP is really about breaking the mindset of the historical mindset of living with the deficiency and just making do. It's realizing that we have the tools and the expertise to do this right and build the shipyards that the Navy needs to sustain the fleet today and into the future. So that concludes the brief that I had planned, but would love to entertain any questions that are out there from the audience.
Great. The first question is, well, it's just a comment. Thanks to the nod for former PWOs. Your comments are spot on.
So I think I saw Roland de Guzman in the audience. I'm guessing that might have come from him.
Yes, indeed it did. Does anybody else have any questions regarding the program? Okay, we've got one. Any estimate on when the SIOP infrastructure improvements at NNSY would begin?
Yes, so that's a great question, and one that's still being developed. So the Admiral Hanley early on alluded to some of the early investment decisions and where those investments are really going. For us here at Norfolk Naval Shipyard, we know it's not us, right? There's other locations based off of their geographic location and their support to potential maritime operations, why they might need to be first in line when it comes to the investment dollars. All pre-decisional, but it's likely 5-6 years off before we'd even be ready with the planning to get to the point where there's true optimization happening here at the shipyard. So not trying to dodge the question, but it's pre-decisional as far as when we'll start to see true investment and true optimization starting to happen here at the shipyard. But Tony or Keith, open the door to either of you if you'd like to augment on that.
I believe you hit it right on the head. The other shipyards appear to be moving out a little quicker. We'll be a little bit behind them. Eventually pulling the program together. The key for us is going to be bridging that gap from now until that occurs with probably a lot of renovation of facilities and dry docks to bridge that.
Right, another question. Sir, once the modeling and ADPs are finished, are SIOP-focused AE contracts anticipated?
Absolutely. The size and scale of this effort is pretty massive. So there's definitely going to be a Navy and a contractor team that needs to come together to pull this off. So while I can't predict with great fidelity exactly when that will happen, but it's definitely going to require a fairly significant contractor team support to pull off the effort that's anticipated for Norfolk Naval Shipyard.
So how confident are we that this investment will make it into the Department of Navy and DoD MILCON programs?
So personally, I'll start and then I'll open it up for Keith and Tony to add. I'm fairly confident for a couple of reasons. One, we've started to see the signs, right? We've started to see the $4 to $5 billion planning and programming investments that are coming as a result of the SIOP effort. But I'm also confident because this really needs to happen. If you are familiar at all with the condition of facilities at the shipyard and what we're trying to maintain and sustain with facilities that are 100 years old, and in some locations even more than that, something's got to be done. So that's why I believe, not just because of the early signs, but also the fact that the program has really come from a place of need. So something has to be done. And I think SIOPS is the right program to get us there. But Tony, Keith, either of you, feel free to jump in.
Yeah, completely agree. The program appears to be really gaining the traction in DC that it's needed to continue to move forward. The GAO report really highlighted the deficiencies, and there's regular congressional briefings on this SIOP program just because of the visibility it's already gaining.
I guess I'll add back in, I'll jump back in. So not just about briefings in DC, but the frequency of visits here at the shipyard has been another element of this tour that's been surprising for me. The frequency and the seniority of the visits to the shipyard, even in a pandemic, right? They're all conducted safely and all conducted with the appropriate safety protocols, but very senior levels of the Navy, very senior levels of the DoD that want to come here, hear about SIOP, and want to see what that looks like on the ground. And they walk away, in my opinion, they walk away convinced that it's the right answer.
All right. Additionally, can you talk about potential environmental concerns associated with SIOP at Norfolk Naval Shipyard?
Keith, you've been living this environment a little bit longer than I have. Maybe give you the opportunity to weigh in on that one first.
Sure. I mean, because of the shipyard being as old as it is, there are certain historical issues that we have to address. And so there's been a conscientious effort to develop a strong program with state as well as national level environmental consultation on this. In addition to the historical aspects, certainly there's, as Norfolk Naval Shipyard having huge industrial processes taking place through the decades that the shipyard's been here, there are those concerns as well, and we are addressing those. Part of our testing and research up front will be more aggressive look at what the environment actually has out there, and we'll put those protection plans together as necessary.
All right. Any discussion of utilizing P4 authorities, EU, LAs, IGSAs, et cetera, as part of SIOP and NSY?
So I guess I'll start with that one. Maybe Keith can add in some of the experiences and some of the discussions over the years. But so one of the things I mentioned during the brief is that it's become a little bit of a mantra that hey, it's all SIOP at this point. So I mentioned that first because we haven't gotten to the point yet where the program has developed an area development plan. But even as we work up to that, the shipyard as an installation and following the lead of other installations in the region is looking for opportunities to capitalize on those enhanced use lease agreements. We have one effort that's pretty significantly underway right now, looking for opportunities for IGSAs, as was mentioned. And then other innovative thinking, Admiral Hanley alluded to energy savings performance contracts. We have a very significant energy savings performance contract making strong headways and gaining momentum currently at the shipyard. So I think the shipyard, and I'm capitalizing on Roland de Guzman's efforts in the past and Keith's efforts over the past decade or so, just voicing off on all those activities and efforts that have been happening here all along. And like I was mentioning before, those all are in conjunction with and in support of the SIOP program as it comes to play.
All right, are there any other questions? I don't have any other in the chat. Certainly if Dave Hunt wants to chime in here, he's welcome to.
I'm just waiting for a mod or sim question.
But Dave, also feel free to elaborate or correct any of the details that I might not have gotten correctly. It's been a huge learning curve for me, understanding what modeling and simulation is. Come a long way from what the simplistic vision of what I thought it was to understanding all of the details and the data elements that it is and what it will be. So please feel free to either augment or correct anything that I put out earlier.
Yeah, well, no corrections needed. I mean, I think you gave a pretty high level scope of what needs to happen at the shipyard. The only thing I would add is, so what we do to make the digital model work is we're currently in the process of building what we call an as-is model. So we use past history from the shipyard, past availabilities to do the model that we need to do from an availability standpoint, and we prove that out so we know the model works appropriately. And then we move to the optimization piece, and that's where the information that we've put into the model informs the decision process on whether a process has to change, equipment has to change, where a building should be located to essentially get you more efficiency at the shipyard. And as you saw from the diagrams that Captain Butler put out, you can see how just shrinking travel distances does save time, but it's also a matter of what you put into those facilities and getting to that futuristic piece where we're actually capturing data real time to be able to make these decisions faster in the future right now.
All right, we have another question. Can you or Tony or Keith talk about some challenges at Norfolk Naval Shipyard related to sea level rise and climate change?
Keith, I'll let you start if you'd like.
Sure. I mean, we are recognizing that there is a potential for sea level changes. As we are moving forward, every project that is coming online, we are addressing it with making sure that we are placing or elevating that construction work to sufficient heights to meet what we consider potential flooding conditions. Case in point is we're wrapping up designs now on a new combined heat power plant under an ESPC project for us here at the shipyard. That project will be built at the 500 year flood elevation. So yeah, we are taking those efforts to recognize that. In addition, we just awarded a MILCOM project here at the shipyard at the north end. That is a flood wall that will provide sea level protection for the 4 submarine dry docks, or 3 submarine dry docks in the north end.
Great, thank you. Linking Admiral Williamson's presentation with this presentation is the Norfolk Naval Shipyard SIOP in coordination with local trade schools for when this program gets boots on the ground.
So I guess I'd broaden that a bit to say that it's not just SIOP. I know that the shipyard today has a pretty significant outreach effort to bring in trades at the appropriate quantity and level. So I know that there's a fairly significant effort. It's primarily outside of the Public Works Department, but Dave Hunt, as a prior operations officer here from the shipyard, might be able to elaborate a bit, but I know there's a very significant outreach effort that's routinely conducted by the shipyard to tap into that local skill set to maintain the viability of waterfront projects going today and into the future.
Yeah, the only other thing I'll add is through the business office at Norfolk, there's also strategic partnership programs with different colleges, universities, and trade schools. I because I haven't been in Norfolk in a while from the Navy side of the house, I don't know exactly where they are today, but I know that there's with each shipyard, there's an effort to understand how the trade skills or the trade schools are teaching people today, and supplementing that with things like the newer equipment that are coming into the shipyards to make sure that those folks can hit the ground running.
All right, we have a couple more minutes for questions if anyone has any, or if anybody else on the group here would like to add any additional comments to what was already said. Could you talk a little bit more about real-time data collection and how that will help your planning efforts?
Dave, if you're willing, I think this is where I could use your expertise.
Yeah, so just a little bit of history. Based upon how cybersecurity at a shipyard has been handled, and I'm not going to go into any details here, but essentially the capabilities of a lot of the machine equipment are not hooked up to a network to collect the real-time data that is capable with the machines that we have right now. So what we're looking at as part of the solution process is how we get an equipment network up and running to essentially collect the touch time that the mechanics have on the machine, so that the data that we collect from jobs right now is at a component level, and it's also at a trade skill level, that we know how that work gets done. But when you get to the back shops or the equipment that folks are working on, it isn't collected at that level. So it's a lot harder to make the apples to apples comparison about what kind of equipment we need in the future to outfit these waterfront production facilities or other consolidated back shops that we do. The faster we can collect that data, the more real-time decisions that we can make. And right now we would have to collect that data by hand, if you will, or by an interview process. And neither of those are as accurate as if we could collect it in real time. One of the other things that you try to do from an equipment perspective too is take multiple machines and combine them into the one where the touch time gets reduced by the mechanics involved. And those are all things that help produce efficiency gains downstream from that. So in today's world, we're suffering from a lack of data in that arena. In tomorrow's world, that should get better as we produce results that allow us to fit within the cybersecurity rules and collect all that data. Over.
Great. Can you provide the overall schedule for ADP, design, NEPA, et cetera?
So I think what we can get into, so the next step in terms of getting to an ADP is really about the following through with the studies that are required to try to map the picture of what the existing conditions are today. So what we need is the funding that supports the execution of those studies. Keith, you might have to help me out. I'm not sure if we're anticipating that will be this year, or if it looks more likely that it'll be next year, or Tony, either of you that might remember better than I. But that's really the next step. And then the picture, a little less specific from there, because it really will be about as the resources are available to move through the development of those ADPs. But Keith or Tony, please feel free to elaborate.
Yeah, the first step is finishing up Mod and Sim. That's going to continue through the rest of this FY. Looking to move to the next phase of these studies to move towards ADP or the next FY. So yeah, it's going to be a slow process as this continues forward. And it gets a little harder to pin down beyond next FY, which, as I said, going to be the studies going into the ADP.
Will there be consideration to constructing additional or new ECPs?
New entry control points, I believe that's what the question was focused on. Maybe not specifically tied to SIOP, but that's one of the things that I tried to allude to in the brief, is that while SIOP is in the direct focus on optimization of the shipyard and specifically the waterfront, there's still all of the infrastructure that exists outside of the central industrial area that maybe not directly involved or maybe not directly part of the area development plan, but things like entry control points that improve ATFP and security and traffic flow, those are always going to be part of the planning process and some of the decision making that's out there for the shipyard, just like any other installation. So Keith, maybe you can give a little bit of background, but I know entry control points and their security, that's always something that we're reviewing and considering and projects that we have in development.
Well, I think you're spot on. Entry control points will always be part of our consideration to use for Admiral Markle's commentary. The roads and commodes aspect of shipyard will continue, and certainly that is entry control points, parking, and just base access in general. That will all still have to be managed through SIOP. So this will be a continuing evolution. The public works side will be, in lockstep with the PMO office here at the shipyard and for well into the future. So that's all I've got. Over.
Thank you. Mike Johnson asks, are you planning to outsource the trades you need or bring them all in-house or a mix of both? Thinking you'd probably need to do some contract work to get it kicked off.
Yeah, so there's absolutely opportunities for contract support throughout everything that I described, whether it's getting through modeling and simulation. That's obviously a very hefty contract supported effort. The studies that we need to conduct, those are all contracted out as well. And then into the construction, that's something that NAVFAC's always relied heavily on their contract partners to get through design, study, and execution of construction to support not just the SIOP program, but all the construction that we do to support the Navy infrastructure.
Thank you. For our last question, I'll let Roland ask it because I'm sure you're sick of hearing my voice now.
Can you hear me, Bill?
Can, yes.
Hey, Roland.
Hey guys, it's great to see familiar faces in the old familiar offices. I think you just answered it, but the investment that you just talked about, I think will involve a lot bigger of a FIAD team and a design management team, construction management team than what we have on board right now. But you said, I think, that there's still a few years off before really you're going to see that investment start to get put on the street and awarded. Do you think you can staff up in time to build those kinds of CM and ET teams?
Yeah, Keith, if you want to.
Yeah, I'll start with that. So it's a good question, Roland. We have, based on the projected workload right now in 21, 22, and 23, we've already started increasing the size of our construction administration force. We have, from the date that you were here, we're probably a good 50% larger than what we were at that time. Certainly, there's some challenges with the construction side flexing to meet the workload as it grows, as we get more and more into SIOP. There'll be more emphasis on Shipyard in particular. We are looking at right now rolling in establishment of a separate ROIC office here at the Shipyard. It's an ROICC office, so that will certainly draw manpower from across the Hampton Roads region, I'm sure, but there will be some challenges resourcing the personnel to staff that up. And so we'll be looking at other avenues to meet those challenges. Over.
Well, I think your shipmates up in Philly, I know from personal experience, learned a lot of lessons about spinning up a team to manage construction in a short period of time. So I think that NAVFAC and NAVC overall are looking at that as a model. But it's exciting. It's exciting to see all the work that's coming your way. Over.
Well, thank you all so much for participating in this panel. We are going to make these slides and recordings available and let everybody download them, available through the website, the Hampton Roads Post SAME website. And we're going to move on to the next panel. Thank you again, all three of you, for your participation and support of SAME. And we're looking forward to being a partner with you as you proceed with your SIOP program.